Today, I'd like to talk about the role of a spiritual teacher. So, we've been studying the precepts recently, the Zen teachings on ethics, how we live our life. And this is one component of that, how we relate to our teachers. As I was preparing for this lecture, I was sort of laughing at myself just now because I kept grabbing more and more books. And in fact, last night when I was going to bed, I was like, I'm going to get up early and because I want to really prepare for this. I want to look a little bit more at what this teacher has said and a little bit more of what this teacher has said. And so yeah, I just grabbed all these books everywhere, and I realized that um, I have a certain discomfort in talking about this myself to you students. So rather than only relying on what other teachers have said, I will do my best just to speak frankly. This is my job. And I will weave in what many others have said over time. In particular, some teachers that I found helpful, particularly helpful, are of course Dogen Zenji, the founder of Soto Zen. In the Tibetan tradition, I really love the way that Samdang Rinpoche puts this. And in the Chan tradition, Venerable Shengyen has really a lot of clarity on this topic. So I found these people inspirational for myself as I was struggling with these questions, and now I still find them inspirational today. Um, so this talk is a compilation of all of that. So first of all, what makes a spiritual teacher? In the Buddhist tradition, a spiritual teacher is traditionally an ordained monk or nun who has done significant training. And because our training style in Zen is a mentorship model, we live with our teachers and they watch us. They get to see us. It's not like they're exactly spying on us. They just see us on the days we're grumpy and on the days we're happy. They see us when we're sick, when we're healthy. They see us in the morning and in the evening, when we're working and when we're in zazen. So then you get to know a person. And they're also teaching us constantly. There are the formal teachings of lectures on the Dharma. In my tradition, there are the one-on-one teachings in Doksan, or meeting directly with a teacher. And for us, that means working through koans one-on-one. So usually I would see my teacher for Doksan every morning, usually at 4 when I was there with him. And during sesshin, many times a day for Doksan formally. As I said, there's the everyday teachings, things that my teacher taught me, like don't make so much noise in the kitchen. When we handle things, it's an expression of our practice. And when you're slamming doors and throwing things into the sink, that is an expression of your practice, that you're not taking care. And I was like, and maybe that's an example that I'll start with because there's no good or bad here. My teacher taught me this. I was working in the kitchen as the cook during sesshin, and the way that his temple is structured, the kitchen happens to be right underneath the zendo. So for those of you who've sat sesshin here in this temple, you'll know that the kitchen is right next to the zendo. So you have to be quiet or you disturb people in their practice. But it's not only that. When he told me this, I'd already been in the kitchen for a few days. And I wondered, I guess he was giving me a chance to settle before he finally said something. And immediately I was like, oh my goodness, it's already been 3 days. Those poor people up there. And then I asked myself, how can I be more quiet? Or I could try. And I found that it wasn't just instant. I can just be quiet in the kitchen. Kitchens are places that can be a lot of noise. And nevertheless, I tried. I would shut the doors very softly. And it meant I had to plan in advance. I'm going to take this out of the refrigerator, so I better go ahead and get a few things out in advance. Oh, this thing is wrapped in plastic. I better unwrap that ahead of sitting. Things like that. So then I had to be more mindful and I learned how to do it. And my kitchen practice became more soft, less worried, and more whole. I was thinking ahead about what I had to do, preparing properly, and then embodying the practice as I did it. And then a few years later, I was visiting with my parents when they still lived in my childhood home. And where my room was, where I lived, when I was a teenager, was directly above the kitchen. And I didn't really pay any attention to this, but my husband noticed, and he said, "Wow, I can see where you get it from. Your mom is so loud in the kitchen." And I realized that she was. And I realized that that had bothered me my whole childhood, being woken up in the morning with slamming and banging. And then I realized that my mom had grown up on a farm and my mom has 12 siblings. And the kitchen was a very busy place. And my grandmother's kitchen was really this very long open space. And I remember the things in there. She had heavy things like cast iron pans, and all these, farm people coming in. It was a place of a lot of liveliness and activity. And so not only did I learn from my teacher how to be in the kitchen, how to embody kitchen practice in a particularly Zen way of teaching, but it gave me the openness to see, I'll call my kitchen karma, the causes and conditions for how I became a loud kitchen person. So there's space for all of it. And my teacher gave me this by just one instruction. A teacher has years of practice and working with their teacher, enough that they've come to some settledness in who they are as a person. And just, this is what I have to work with. And there's a point in practice where, in our tradition, where you have expressed an understanding of the koans to the satisfaction of the teacher, and also the teacher sees your daily activities in a way that they feel embodies the Dharma, to the extent that you can start teaching yourself. And this is when they give teaching permission. This is what makes a teacher, not what you read in the books, not just waiting for a certain number of years, not only going to the monastery for training, not getting to a certain place in the koans, but all of it together as this alchemy of growing up and becoming a spiritual adult as a monk. So a teacher should have proper training. And then a teacher should embody that training. So they should be qualified, able to speak on the Dharma, but with some humility. And everyone has their style. Some teachers skew more academic. Some are really flashy. Some are really quiet. And their style should reflect who they are. I remember when I first started giving Dharma talks online, which was not a comfortable place for me, and maybe still is not. So, um, and I have a good friend who works in theater, and he said, "I want to see one of your Dharma talks." And I said, "Oh, okay." So he saw it, and he said when he first saw it, he thought in his head, "Girl, don't you know this is a show?" And then he said he thought about it, and he said, "No, that's what I like about your style, is that it's not a show, it's a conversation." This is what came out for me, but my style is not everybody's style. It's what the embodied practice of years of training has turned out to be. Teachers are still human. Venerable Shinyan talks about this quite a lot. Enlightened teachers are still human, and our expectations or our desire or dreams for teachers to be more is all us. So he teaches on this quite a bit. We should expect right conduct of our teachers. We should expect digested understanding of the teachings, and we should expect them to make mistakes sometimes. So if we never see any mistake, then maybe something's being hidden. We all continue to make mistakes and we correct for them. We mess up. We let go, apologize, let go, and try again. And I spoke on this a bit last week in the talk on repentance. Venerable Shengyen says quite strongly, we should judge teachers by their Dharma, not the person. By the Dharma as expressed. The Dharma belongs to all of us. The Dharma is yours as well. It's not something you get from a person or a book. You extract out and then you like eat it, and then it's something that gives you some magical qualities. It's more a stripping away of all the extra so that our own Buddha nature can shine freely. What are some obstructions to practicing the Dharma with a good teacher? One is just not having a good teacher. We have to find a teacher who's not only trained, but who works for us, who speaks to us, maybe not in a way that we always agree with, but that we find nourishing. So more like compost than a mirror. If we see a mirror and we're always like, yeah, okay, got that, then that's probably not a good teacher for you. But somebody who makes you uncomfortable sometimes in what they say, or points out things that, oh, I never quite thought of that way, that might be more helpful. Another obstruction is not knowing how to relate to a teacher. And Venerable Shengyen speaks about this quite a bit. I'll find what he says here. There are many reasons why this is from Attaining the Way. There are many reasons why some practitioners do not experience the benefits of Zen, but I'll mention just three. One is not having a good teacher. Another is not knowing how to relate to the teacher. And the third is having a teacher who doesn't know what your problems are and can't help you. From this, it might seem that the student's failure to make progress lies with the teacher. But in fact, the problem usually arises from karmic obstructions with the student. A piece of jade embedded in a rock must certainly encounter a clear-eyed craftsperson before it can become a precious jewel. But if the rock is just a rock, even an expert craftsperson cannot turn it into a jewel. So then he goes on to talk about our basic karma, what we have to work with, and how we can engage with the Dharma from that point of view. Between a teacher and a student, constant direct teaching is not always necessary. And we must encounter a teacher in order to get past our own karmic obstructions. So he likens it to giving somebody a key for some that opens like a treasure chest. For some people, they'll know how to use the key pretty easily based on our causes and conditions, our karma. And others, no matter what, they cannot figure out how to use that key. So we'll need more help. So, what are the obstructions that hold us back? Suspicion, arrogance, low self esteem, cravings, anger, and wrong views. They're all familiar to Zen practitioners. Suspicion, arrogance, low self esteem, cravings, anger, and wrong views. It's quite a list, right? Like you're just like just one of those where they're like, okay, I got that one. No, I have that one. All right, fine. Okay, fine. I need a teacher. um, it makes me want to get it. Go. I'm going to see my teacher soon. So, um, so these are things that we can start to really see as we start to practice with the teacher. Sometimes we see those things a little more illuminated than even we're used to. Again, it can make us uncomfortable, but that discomfort is really coming more from ourselves. I know sitting in this position myself now as a teacher, when I see Zen students working through things that are difficult, especially self-doubt or self-criticism, including anger, including all of this list, then I feel such a tenderness for them. I don't feel this anger or resentment myself. I just feel like more love and care. These are hard things to work through. So when we bring these, just know that probably the teacher, hopefully, the teacher has seen them before. And if you find that they haven't, then maybe it's not a good place. We've all been through things, all of us. I remember when I was very newly ordained, my teacher let me, I was like just barely ordained, maybe a few months or maybe a couple of months. And my teacher let me go to this special intensive practice for women at a nearby monastery. Um, and I went, and the abbot of the monastery told us a story one day. He said when he had been younger, I don't remember if he was still a novice, or I think he was still a novice. He had a teacher, and his particular teacher, they were always fighting, just fighting, fighting, fighting. And there was a lot of anger there. So he was always fighting with his teacher. And then finally, one day, he said, I've had enough. I'm leaving. And so he left. And he went away, and he said he started to, he didn't know what to do. He was so consumed with anger. And also, he was ill. he got really sick. So he felt so trapped in his, this cesspool of his own anger that he was like, I don't know what to do. That stupid teacher, he's so, why do you have to be that way? He pushed me away. And so he said, okay, so fine. I don't, I'm exaggerating a little. He was Japanese. He didn't really talk this way. But I don't know what to do, but I can't do all the morning service, but I'll light one stick of incense a day and I'll do the prostrations. That'll be it. So he said he did. He said every morning, even when his physical body did not want to, this story always makes me get emotional. He still did it. He would get up, he would offer the incense, and he'd do his prostration. What was he prostrating to? To whom was he prostrating? It was not just this one person, I would say, but to the Dharma itself. The Dharma as it belongs to all of us. He would do his prostration to the Buddhas and the ancestors embodied in his teacher, all of them. Would do his prostration eventually to his own Buddha nature as well. He did this for a year. And he said after a year, he was able to go back to his teacher and to continue his practice with him with a newfound understanding and maturity in his practice. And he stayed until he received Dharma transmission with him. Now, when I hear this story, it's so beautiful to me. When I heard the story then, as I told you, I had been ordained for a few months or a few weeks. I can't remember. Then I thought, I would never do that to my teacher. I love my teacher. My teacher is so great. I am so happy to have my teacher. And that is so rude, like that you would be like that to your teacher. I still listened, though. I still really took in what he was saying. By the time I got to my teacher, I had met many, many teachers over time and was very confident when I went back to my teacher that this was the right place for me. I was like, I'm not going to do that. And of course I did, maybe not to that extent, but you get to a point in your practice where your teacher knows nothing. Your teacher's a complete idiot. They know absolutely have no understanding. And again, that's you. When a teacher sees a student in this place, it usually happens at a certain marker in your training, at least as a priest. It's actually a moment of, it's difficult, but it's also a moment of joy because you see that they have got their feet under them and they're starting to stand on their own. You see that they no longer need you so much, that they're going to be okay. How do we support our teachers? First of all, we make offerings to our teachers. We make offerings of material goods and financial support, freely given, freely let go of. We also make a genuine offer of our genuine practice. And this offering is the best offering when people are really trying their best. We had that alchemy happen Last Saturday, we had the one-day sitting, and there was just such a palpable feeling of everybody is trying their best. And it's so nourishing for me as a teacher. I got to share in it too. I get to be that way myself. It was really, this is a beautiful offering. So we make offerings to our teachers. Second, we offer help. To offer help, we have to learn by looking around, where help is needed. We offer help and we show respect. So we have to learn what's needed in order to offer help. And we have to actually do it. We have to follow through. If you think of a time, if you have a good friend and a relative and it's their birthday, the way that when you really, their birthday's coming and it's a big birthday and you want to make it a good present, you have to start thinking about it in advance. You can't do a last minute present because it doesn't matter if it's expensive, it will not be the right present. You have to open your peripheral vision and notice what they like, what they don't like. Go to a restaurant with them, notice what they order, what they don't order, talk to them. When you're paying attention, you find the ways to help. But you have to do that. You have to do it and follow through and to be reliable and consistent. And then in terms of showing respect, this is how to support the teachers. So, the example I talked about of the teacher who offered the prostrations, that's one way. Even when he wasn't feeling it in his heart, he still did it in his body. We're often the other way too. We really feel it in our heart and we're not quite sure how to do it in our bodies. But bring those together. When I was in graduate school, I was in a Tibetan Buddhist graduate school, and one of the students there was very new to Buddhism. And he was a very blunt person, Michael. He said, "Do I have to call you venerable?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't answer this. I don't know what to do." It's so embarrassing. And then I was like, "No, he's new. He's asking directly. He really wants to know." And I said, "Yeah, you know, especially if there's a Buddha in the room, because it's not me, the person. It's the robe, it's the tradition that you're offering respect to. And if you have difficulty respecting a particular person, then offer the respect to the robe, to the tradition. You know what the robe represents, the renunciation and the tradition, the ancestors." And he was like, "Okay, thanks." That was it for him. For me, it was more difficult than him. Sometimes when people asked me that question there, I would say, "Well, what does your teacher do?" The teacher there had been a monk for many years and had decided to disrobe as a monk, and was still a Rinpoche, still a teacher. And he had no problem at all calling me venerable, even though had he stayed a monk, he would have been so completely senior to me. And he was also my teacher. For him, not a deal, not a big deal. So again, it's not me as a human, it's the robe, it's the teachings. So we offer respect. And then finally, the way to support your teacher is to follow their advice. Dogen Jinji speaks on this in Zui Monkey. When I was preparing this, I got out Zui Monkey Dogen Zenji's teachings and a bookmark fell out. Now, like, oh no, I lost my place. And I just opened it to a random place. And that's good too. I get, it just comes up over and over. But here I'll read this part. All the Buddhas and ancestors were originally ordinary people. While they were ordinary people, they certainly did bad things and had evil thoughts. Some of them might have even been dull-witted or fools. However, since they followed their teachers, relied on the Buddha's teaching and practice, and transformed themselves, they all became Buddhas and ancestors. Today's people should also do the same. We should not disparage ourselves, thinking that we are foolish or dull-witted. If we do not arouse the mind of awakening in this present lifetime, when can we expect to? If we're fond of the way, we'll surely attain it. That has nothing to do with advice. I think I used the wrong quotation, but I'll leave it there. Follow your teacher's advice, their guidance. Again, in the model of compost, you're not looking for a magic pill. You're looking for nourishment and help to engage with, to help you with your practice, to guide you along the way. So if you just give me, then that's not going to work either. You have to really engage with it, especially in the areas where you're most uncomfortable. At least that's my experience myself. We have to forget ourselves and our problems for the sake of the Dharma. So all for the sake of the Dharma. Then I'll conclude with the words from Samdong Rinpoche as promised. Because remember, that dim-witted person or that fool, even if you see yourself as that, will also become a teacher. Rinpoche, you cannot be deceived by your inner teacher. That is for sure. You may deceive yourself several times in the process of awakening or recognizing your inner teacher. You may not have awakened your inner teacher. You may mistake something else as your inner teacher, and that voice will deceive you. For beginners, I don't think that without external guidance or without the transmission of a teacher, an outer teacher, you can simply rely on books or your inner teacher. You need an outer teacher. But you need not depend on that outer teacher forever. You may have an outer teacher or a guide for a short spell of time. It's a matter of human connectedness, during which a kind of transmission or a kind of lineage is established, just as I talked about with my own teacher. You still need someone to rely upon whenever you have doubts in interpreting or understanding the writings, whenever you have doubts in your practice, whenever you have questions. And questions aren't just, what was that term again? Questions are our inner questions, our deepest questions. You should not insist that you're capable of solving the problems presented. There should be someone to refer us when we say, I don't understand this, or am I understanding this correctly? Awakening the inner teacher requires a high level of spiritual attainment. He talks about where it usually shows up in our practice, at what point. But I would caution that there's a lot of danger in not recognizing the inner teacher correctly. But once you have identified it, then it is completely dependable. Completely dependable. As we practice, we do most of the work ourselves with guidance. We're taking in the teachings. We have a teacher to help us along the way, and we continue on. And sometimes we get off just a bit. If we get off just a bit, pretty soon we get off really far. So the teacher's job is not to control everything we do, but to pay attention and to notice, oh, come back over here and bring us back into line so that we can continue on our own. This is the role of a spiritual teacher. That's what wanted to be said today. So I encourage you to engage honestly, to engage with a teacher without being harsh on yourself, especially when you have those times of difficulty. Everybody has that. Well, please take today from my talk, take what's useful and leave the rest and continue in your practice. Thank you.